WRLR 98.3 FM.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Reality Radio. I'm your host, David Rich. In the studio tonight with my buddy Sanj. Hello, Sanj.
Hey, guys.
We're interviewing 4 presidential candidates from the Libertarian Party tonight. We just got done talking to Arvin Vohra, which was cool, very informative. And now we're going to be calling Daniel Berman. Tell us a little about Daniel.
Daniel Taxation is Theft Berman.
Yeah.
He's a very popular candidate. He everyone knows him because he's always in a suit and a big yellow hat.
Right.
He's got his own branding going on.
Right.
So you see the hat, you know who he is right away.
Right.
And that's his thing. He talks about taxation being theft, and he explains it really well, so I'm sure he will tonight.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's...
Claire Ball, I am having a good time. Thank you. I got your message.
Hi, Claire. All right, well, let's call Dan. Dan, are you there? Oh.
There we go.
Taxation is theft.
Dan?
He's there.
Okay, so my name is David Rich. I'm the host of Reality Radio. I'm in the studio with Sanj. How you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
All right, cool. So this is an opportunity for you to just sort of discuss your platform, your position. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your history in getting into the the Libertarian Party?
Watch your mouth.
I know, exactly.
So I grew up in California, and I kind of went through the whole gamut, Democrat, Republican, trying to find out, why I'm there. I think I was kind of born a libertarian because I was always fighting traffic tickets, fighting, when my mom says, well, you have to go to school, and I say, why?
Right.
Every little thing, I always questioned authority, and I always kind of struggled with that. And for people to just tell me, well, that's just the way it is, was never a good answer to me. So I was always looking for more answers. And I started fighting traffic tickets. I started fighting taxes. And I really just struggled with the fact that both the Democrats and the Republicans seemed to be lying to me about everything. They both seemed to be pretty complicit in this big system that had all of these structures in place that were robbing everybody blind, forcing people into poverty, taking their homes away, beating people up, taking all their money, everything else, lying, cheating, and stealing. And I was like, there's got to be somebody out there that's doing something about this. So I stumbled on the Libertarian Party, and I was like, okay, I can go with this. And just being around them long enough, that kind of got me to stand up and say, okay, nobody's fighting this on the level that I think it needs to be fought, so I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do it.
Okay. What was your first entry into the Libertarian platform?
It was actually, I had just moved to San Antonio, and I met the Bexar County LP. I actually met them through a Toastmasters group. They set up a Liberty Toastmasters group. And I had, at that point, when I started going to that, I had no idea what the Libertarian Party was. So they brought me in, and within a few months, they said, hey, you should run for Texas House. So I ran for Texas House in my district, did an awesome job with that. That was in 2014. And I've been working with the party ever since, just doing whatever kind of activism I can and, just fighting for the truth to get out there.
All right, good. Sanj, you have anything you want to ask him?
Sure. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You have been really good with marketing and branding. I have to give you a shout out for that because everyone seems to know they might not know your name, but they know the guy in the yellow hat. So that's pretty cool. I want to say that I met you in 2016 at the National Convention in Orlando, and you told me then you were going to run for president in 2020. So you're one of the first politicians I've met who's kept his promises. So that's a good thing. But, I've seen you travel outside the country talking about liberty, and I just wanted you to touch on that a moment.
Sure. So I'm talking to you right now from Mexico, where I've been staying off and on for the past couple of years. I've traveled all around to Australia and Uganda. And I've really just spreading this message online and having my friends in all those places, I've actually been able to reach so much further I've got friends in Hong Kong that reached out to me, and I've interviewed on my show about, what's going on there. And it's really interesting to see when you go to all of these different places around the world, there are people who understand freedom and they want freedom. And the fact that they live in all these different countries with all these different programs doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a socialist or a capitalist or a high tax or a low tax country. It doesn't matter. Most people understand that their governments are tyrants. They're run by tyrants. And at the end of the day, people just want to be free. For the most part, there are a lot of people who are kind of, I don't want to use the word brainwashed, but led to
conditioned
that they're conditioned that their government is trying to do good things for them. Usually you have one group of politicians saying, hey, I would have fixed the whole thing, but it was the other group of politicians who screwed it up. But the truth is, like, when people really become knowledgeable about how their own governments are working, they understand that they are taking away their freedom, they are robbing them blind, they're forcing people into poverty, and it's really all of these systems that are put in place to benefit the wealthy, to benefit the powerful, at the expense of everybody else in the entire country.
Okay, well said. Excuse me. Anything about your platform you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, there's this one small thing that I have that's kind of popular. Taxation is theft.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Go ahead.
So this is one of the things that I talk about the most because, everybody complains about one thing from the government or not that they disagree with. And the truth is, taxation is at the heart of all of it. Whether it's a government program that you don't like, it's being paid for with taxes. If you're struggling through life, the chances are it's because of taxes. There are so many taxes that we don't even know how many there are. Most people are, they believe, okay, it's my income tax and my sales tax, and that's pretty much it. But no, there are so many taxes. And when you add them all up, the government in the U.S., the state and the federal governments and the local governments are taking more than 50% of the average American's income.
Whoa.
So this is a huge, huge problem that we need to address. And of course, a lot of that is related to spending, which a lot of people are upset with. But the truth is, the spending is out of control because the taxes are so high. At the end of the day, the government's going to say, well, let's see, we can print money, we can borrow money. Printing money is another tax through inflation. We can borrow money from banks, and banks justify how much they can lend based on the government's income, which is their taxation. So the more we pay in taxes, the more the government is able to justify spending. And then they continue to spend, and then they say, oh, well, we've got so much debt, we're going to have to raise the taxes some more. And as they raise the taxes some more, they say, oh, well, we have all this extra money, let's spend some more. So that's why it always grows, it always continues, and we really have to start pulling things back in the other direction. And, on the note of the national debt, I'll say this, which gets a lot of people kind of riled up. If you owe the bank $24,000, you have a problem. If you owe the bank $24 trillion, the bank has a problem. Right now, the United States government is in a $24 trillion debt, and of course, there's all kinds of other promises that they've made that are going to increase that debt. But the United States government, as much as it has a spending problem, that debt is a bank's problem. There are people who are owed that money, and that's really their problem. So we need to look at this debt and understand that if you collected all of the U.S. dollars in the entire world, you wouldn't be able to pay off very much of that debt. If you collected all of the gold in the entire world, you wouldn't be able to pay off that entire debt. And so we need to understand that we can't pay off this debt. We're beyond that point. So we need to figure out how can we negotiate some of it down, default on some of it without collapsing the entire economy, and figuring out a way to proceed with that.
All right, cool, very cool. So let me ask you, as a presidential candidate, you're going to have to deal with the bigger issues concerning the Republican and Democratic parties and how they're dealing with these things as well, like healthcare and climate change. As a Libertarian candidate, let's start with healthcare. What would your position be?
So healthcare, I've actually got a full plan that's up on the website, Berman2020.com. Basically, the idea is this. We've always been in this belief that we need government to take money from wealthier people, and they can use that money to pay for health care for people who don't have so much. What they're really doing is whenever they say they're going to pass a new tax, they don't tax the wealthy. They've had plenty of opportunities. The House has been controlled by the Democrats and the Republicans before. They don't pass bills that tax the wealthy. They pass bills that tax the middle class. We can't expect them to ever go in there and tax the wealthy. It's not going to happen. But we can look at what the policies are now, and what they're doing is they're protecting monopolies. If you look at the medications that are sold in the U.S., those exact same medications, even by some of the exact same manufacturers, are being sold in other countries around the world for a fraction of the price. So why are the prices so high here? It's because the government has created policies, and of course it's because of the lobbyists that they work with. The government has created policies that prohibit you from importing those drugs that might have been manufactured right here in the U.S. They prohibit you from importing them from other countries that sell them cheaper. Why? It props up the high prices. The same thing with doctors. There is a fixed number of doctors that can get certified and licensed every year, and that is limiting the number of doctors that we have. That means when you go to the doctor's office, everybody knows you get there. Even though you have an appointment, you're still going to sit there in the waiting room for an hour. You're going to get there. They might take you into an actual physical room where you'll get to sit and talk to a couple of nurses who do most of the work, check your blood pressure and everything else. Then the doctor comes in and sees you for 5 minutes. If you look at other countries where they have less restrictions on people becoming doctors, those doctors are just as qualified, but there are so many that you don't have to deal with the scheduling where you got to make an appointment so many months out, or where you get to the waiting room and you have to wait that long and you see the doctor for 5 minutes. In a lot of countries, you walk into a clinic where a doctor is, you say, hey, I need to see a doctor, and they bring the doctor out. Within a couple hours, you can be in there, or you can schedule an appointment for, some pretty big procedures that are only a couple weeks out, and you get the same quality care and a much lower price. And the biggest difference is just that they have more doctors who are able to do the service than are available in the United States per capita.
All right, very cool. Okay, so another couple issues you're going to have to contend with. One will be climate change. Another one will be education. Let's start with climate change.
Okay, so climate change is the first thing we need to do is, because it's obviously related to pollution and right. I guess that's debatable whether or not you believe it's man-made or not. But one of the political-driven issues is that it is man-made.
Right.
And so if we want to address that, we can say, okay, let's look at the world's biggest polluter, or at least the country's biggest polluter, which is the U.S. government or the U.S. military specifically, and say, why are they the biggest polluter? And let's fix that. You want to look at all of the other, people want to move to clean renewable energy like solar power, wind farms, and all these other things. Why aren't we doing that? We're doing it, but it's really, really slow. Why is it so slow? And you look at how the government regulates and subsidizes coal industries. We have this thing where if you build solar in your own home, especially if you want to get completely off grid, sometimes that's prohibited by local laws. If you do build your own solar and you're still attached to the grid, you're able to sell it back to the grid, but the government steps in and says, oh, well, we want to fix the prices that you're able to buy or sell it, removing the market force, which basically means the electric company is still going to have to produce oil and coal power, and they're not going to be able to buy your solar power. And basically that keeps more people or more companies running on this dirty energy. There are other alternatives like thorium power, which is basically a cleaner, safer variety of nuclear energy. That's something that's been under research for a pretty long time, and that's something that has very, very good results that we've been able to see under test scenarios, and we need to see why can't we start moving in that direction. And of course, there's a lot of pushback on nuclear because of the dangers of nuclear, but we need to understand that nuclear, even the dirty nuclear that we have now, is much safer and much cleaner than a lot of the old fossil fuels that we're using. And then moving to something like thorium would be so much cleaner, so much safer, and the possibility for meltdown is almost completely eliminated. So okay. I think there are plenty of free market ways to move forward with that.
Yeah, I did. I wrote a paper once in a political science class on nuclear power, and it's definitely the most bang for your buck. Extremely powerful source of energy. The problem, obviously, the issue is obviously Chernobyl and whatever the Lover's Lane Canal thing out east, whatever that was.
3 Mile?
3 Mile, thank you. How you avoid those sort of catastrophes. Because if something goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong.
Right.
Yeah, but it's an extremely powerful form of energy, resource of energy. So if you can really get it so it is just, 99.9999% sure that it's extremely safe, then you should probably go ahead with it. But at the same time, too, new fault lines are created by the earth here and there. Like, okay, we'll build it over here because there's never been any earthquakes. All of a sudden, nature decides to divide that land up. So nature's own predictability.
Well,
all of a sudden, a tsunami hits, whatever. Go ahead.
That's the beauty of thorium. Is that
what is that? I never heard of that.
Meltdown. So basically, it's a different atom with a different atomic weight, a different number of protons and neutrons and everything in it. Basically, what happens is when you use a uranium reactor, you break an atom up and it starts shooting off electrons, and that creates a chain reaction. And so the danger of nuclear energy is you have to control that chain reaction. With thorium, because of the way that it reacts, because it's a different atom completely, that risk is not there. It does not continue on a chain reaction like that. So the risk of a meltdown is actually is almost none. So when you worry about regular nuclear, what you have to do is you have to worry about controlling the temperature the whole time, making sure it's underwater, making sure the water is circulating in the right way. But with thorium, that doesn't become an issue. If you unplug it completely, it just slowly shuts itself down just because of the way the atoms are reacting.
And this is Sanj. I had a question on thorium. Now, it's different in that the byproduct of it cannot be weaponized. Is that right?
From what I understand, yes. I'm not an absolute expert on it, but from what I understand, it does create thorium creates uranium, but it's a different variant of uranium from the uranium that's used in a uranium reactor. Uranium produces plutonium, and plutonium is what they use to weaponize. So there's a theory out there that the reason the government is not funding any type of thorium reactor is because they don't get the weapons grade plutonium that they can use to create atomic bombs afterwards. So, government's kind of screwing us shooting us in the foot.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak? So the guest before us, what was his, from Arvin spoke heavily about the military, considerably so. Do you have any libertarian positions on that? Just military in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people join the military for the right reason with the wrong premises. I know so many vets who, they join saying, hey, I'm going to get my college paid for when I get out, or I'm going to become a citizen, or, all these different things that are promised to them. And they go in first, they lose a lot of those promises. They never get delivered on. But then a lot of them see what's really going on in a lot of these foreign interventions. And they're like, hey, I don't want any part of this, but I'm here under contract. I can't just leave, or else I risk being thrown in prison. So a lot of veterans that I know take a very libertarian stance, which is, hey, the government is overreaching their authority. We're not here defending freedom. We're not here fighting for Americans' rights. We're here to steal oil or protect poppy fields, or that sort of thing. So that's kind of the position. I know Arvin's very critical of people who join the military, and I don't like to
the current military. He made that clear.
Right. Yeah, and it's I don't really I don't know if it's an insult what he says, but I don't like to go that route because I understand if you join for good reasons, even if it's like you're lied to, right? You're basically lied to. It's like if somebody sells you a car, and you buy a used car and you believe it's a legitimate car that they were the previous owner. That doesn't make you a criminal. But if you buy a used car and you know that it's a stolen car, that does make you a criminal. So, if you join the military under false pretenses, believing that you're going to be fighting for freedom, that doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
But we do need to straighten out the military. We do need to pull back a lot of these foreign interventions we're in. We need to stop trying to be the world's police. We need to stop killing terrorists, which creates more terrorists. We need to stop all these programs that are really making the world worse and more violent.
A lot of people don't get that last point you just made, that by intruding in other people's affairs creates a greater terrorist collective. People don't seem to get that. The fact of the matter is how would you like it if, let's say, we have if Illinois went over to, Georgia and just started meddling in their business all over the place. You're pissing them off. Okay, let people live their lives and take care of themselves. If they truly need some sort of help, then okay, we can deal with that if there's an actual problem. But going into World War II, we had something like 14 military bases, most of them here in the United States. Afterwards, we had something like 140 something across the globe. It was absolutely military imperialism galore. And a lot of the locals in a lot of these places are like, get the hell out of my country. We don't want you here. No. We're America. We know what's best for you. Stupid. Anyway. All right. So how about education? Go ahead.
So education. I actually have a platform. By the way, my platform on healthcare is called Free Healthcare. My platform on education is called Free Education.
Oh, wow.
Of course, that's a trigger word for a lot of people because
people are going to think you mean socialized.
Yes, but really the idea is it's free as in freedom. So we want to give people back their choices. With the education system, let's talk about the college student loan debt.
Okay.
We're basically this is kind of a fraudulent system, right? Because if you're 18, you want to go to college, and somebody's offering you 50 or 100 grand to go to college, right? To pay for this expensive tuition that you can't afford, right? Would they lend you that money for a house? No. And they're instead, in a house they can repossess, a car they can repossess, but in education they cannot. So why are they willing to lend you that much money? And it's because they, through their lobbyists and government and policies and everything else, they have created special exemptions and protections for themselves. So once you take on those student loans, you cannot get out of them by defaulting. You cannot get out of them through bankruptcy. And if you die, sometimes they get passed on to your children, and your children have to pay them. That is absolutely insane.
Oh, really?
There is no other debt in this country that they can do that with. And so if you get rid of that restriction, I guarantee you the very next day, the banks are going to start being a lot more careful with their money. Now, people are going to say, oh, but then I'm not going to have any money, so I'm not going to be able to afford to go to college. Well, there's a few different ways to look at that. First of all, college is not as valuable as a lot of people make it out to be.
That's for sure.
Myself, I went to a community college to take some kind of general courses, but I was always into programming. So I learned to be a programmer. I learned by reading books and experimenting myself and doing online courses. I'm now paid almost $200,000 a year for that, and I don't have a college degree or anything else. Anybody else can do that too. I know there's the whole, learn to code thing, and people get upset over that, but it's not just coding. I know people who have learned to do advertising and marketing, and they make millions of dollars with that, and they never sat in a college for marketing or anything else in their entire life.
Right.
So,
yeah, and there's the current idea is that it's like, no, we won't hire you unless you go to college and get at least a bachelor's degree. It's nonsense.
It's ridiculous.
Obviously, we want doctors and lawyers to be highly educated, that kind of thing. And there's definitely room for some programs to be in upper universities. But like your typical business degree, why do you have to get a degree to go to run it, to work in a business? Business degrees are the most useless things in the world. If you want to study logic or something, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Even with doctors and lawyers, a lot of that is just boring book work that's memorized and repeat. There's no reason that you could, if you're going to take 6 years of med school, there's no reason that 2 to 4 years of that can't be done online, which reduces a lot of the cost. So now you're only going to pay for 2 years instead of 6 years. Not only that, it frees up 2/3 of the resources of the medical schools, so now they can train 3 times as many doctors in the same amount of time.
So are you saying doctors don't need to go to school first, or just less school?
No. I'm saying for a lot of that work, if you want to memorize the humanly, you don't need to be sitting in a classroom. You can at home. When you need to start looking at cadavers or start working with actual patients and doing your residencies, that does need to be done in person.
I see what you're saying.
But there's so much of that can be done at home.
Right, like learning anatomy, right? Buy a Grey's Anatomy book. Study.
Exactly.
Okay, we got about 1 minute.
That's all you're going to be doing in school.
Right, exactly. We got about 1 minute left. Whatever you want to plug about your campaign, please do.
Sure. So my campaign website is berman2020.com. We can really use some donations and volunteers. Right now, we've got all kinds of flyers that are kind of infographic flyers going out all over the country thanks to our volunteers. By the thousands, they're getting distributed everywhere so that everybody can understand what taxation theft means, what all these bad government programs are that are encroaching on our freedoms, and how they're paid for taxes, and how we can kind of start getting out of that system.
Okay, very cool. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for being on the show. I had a great time, very interesting, got to know a lot about you. As I told the previous guest, we got a lot of time before the next election, so maybe we can have you on again.
Awesome, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy, take care.
Take care, Dan.
All right, well, that was Daniel Berman. Daniel, Taxation is Theft Berman. That was an excellent interview, very informative. These guys really know their stuff.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
I know Dan has been working on this a long time.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, all right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to Reality Radio.